Hi guys, I wanted to start reading chapter 1 with you. I won't read every chapter and I won't even read this whole chapter, but I just like starting some of the books with you, and there will be a few times that I'll use this ebook that I found for $3 to kind of highlight some things that I think are really important. Obviously, I'm going to refer back to my hard copy sometimes, but here we go. Okay, chapter 1. In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice that I've been turning over in my mind ever since. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, he told me, just remember that all the people in this world, haven't had the advantages that you've had. He didn't say any more, but we've always been unusually communicative in a reserved way, and I understood that he meant a great deal more than that. In consequence, I'm inclined to reserve all judgments, a habit that has opened up many curious natures to me and also made me the victim of not a few veteran bores. The abnormal mind is quick to detect and attach itself to this quality when it appears in a normal person, and so it came about that in college I was unjustly accused of being a politician because I was privy to the secret griefs of wild, unknown men. Most of their confidences were unsought. Frequently I have feigned sleep, preoccupation, or a hostile levity when I realized by some unmistakable sign that an intimate revelation was quivering on the horizon. For the intimate revelations of young men, or at least the terms in which they express them, are usually plagiaristic and marred by obvious suppressions. Reserving judgments is a matter of infinite hope. I am still a little afraid of missing something if I forget that, as my father snobbishly suggested, and I snobbishly repeat, a sense of the fundamental decencies is parceled out unequally at birth. So a couple of things that I want to really point out here. One, that his father points out that you've had Nick, that's the narrator, and you'll get to know him throughout. So we do not have an omniscient, all-knowing narrator here, but we've got Nick, one of the characters, telling the story from his memory. But starting off, telling you that he has been more advantaged. And so, he is trying to see the best in people. But then also starts to kind of build himself up as a good narrator. And one of the ways he does that is by suggesting that people just tell him stuff. He's not looking for them to tell him stuff, they just tell him stuff. And so, he gets a lot of these stories that he might not otherwise hear. And that's what makes him at least a little bit more reliable of a narrator in his mind. Okay, continuing on. And after boasting this way of my tolerance, I come to the admission that it has a limit. Conduct may be founded on the hard rock or the wet marshes, but after a certain point, I don't care what it's founded on. When I came back from the East last autumn, I felt that I wanted the world to be in uniform and at a sort of moral attention forever. I wanted no more riotous excursions with privileged glimpses into the human heart. Only Gatsby, the man who gives his name to this book, was exempt from my reaction. Gatsby, who represented everything for which I have an unaffected scorn. If personality is an unbroken series of successful gestures, then there was something gorgeous about him, some heightened sensitivity to the promises of life, as if he were related to one of those intricate machines that register earthquakes 10,000 miles away. This responsiveness had nothing to do with that flabby impressionability which is dignified under the name of the creative temperament. It was an extraordinary gift for hope, a romantic readiness such as I had never found in any other person, and which it is not likely I shall ever find again. No, Gatsby turned out all right at the end. It is what preyed on Gatsby, what foul dust floated in the wake of his dreams, that temporarily closed out my interest in the abortive sorrows and short-winded elations of men. So again, this is really important. He says, but there's a limit to him not judging people and withholding his judgment. And he says, at a certain point, I don't care. And when he came back from the East, he felt that he wanted the world to be more uniform, and he didn't want all of this excess that he saw when he was in New York. So that becomes really important. And the only person that he decides he can still think of as really great is Gatsby. But notice something preys on Gatsby. Continuing, my family have been prominent, well-to-do people in this middle western city for 3 generations. The Carraways are something of a clan, and we have a tradition that we're descended from the Dukes of Buccleuch. But the actual founder of my line was my grandfather's brother, who came here in 51, sent to substitute to the Civil War, and started the wholesale hardware business that my father carries on today. So notice, his grandfather was well-to-do enough to send someone in his stead to the Civil War. And we're talking 1851 there. Continuing, I never saw this great uncle, but I'm supposed to look like him. With special reference to the rather hard-boiled paintings that hangs in Father's office, I graduated from New Haven in 1915, just a quarter of a century after my father, and a little later I participated in that delayed Teutonic migration known as the Great War. I enjoyed the counter-raid so thoroughly that I came back restless. Instead of being the warm center of the world, the Middle West now seemed like the ragged edge of the universe. So I decided to go east and learn the bond business. Everybody I knew was in the bond business, so I supposed it could support one more single man. All my aunts and uncles talked it over as if they were choosing a prep school for me, and finally said, "Why, yes," with very grave, hesitant faces. Father agreed to finance me for a year, and after various delays, I came east, permanently, I thought, in the spring of 22. So notice, Nick is a veteran of World War I, what they then called the Great War. He's from the Midwest, but of a big enough family that his aunts and uncles were also a part of the decision of whether or not he could go east. And so, he's got some kind of inheritance involved here. And his father decided he would pay for him to try out this bond business in New York for about a year. The practical thing was to find rooms in the city, but it was a warm season, and I had just left a country of wide lawns and friendly trees. So when a young man at the office suggested that we take a house together in a commuting town, it sounded like a great idea. He found the house, a weather-beaten cardboard bungalow at $80 a month, but at the last minute the firm ordered him to Washington, and I went out to the country alone. I had a dog, at least I had him for a few days until he ran away, and an old Dodge and a Finnish woman who made my bed and cooked breakfast and muttered Finnish wisdom to herself over the electric stove. So a Dodge and a Finnish woman are two servants. It was lonely for a day or so until one morning some man, more recently arrived than I, stopped me on the road. "How do you get to West Egg Village?" he asked helplessly. I told him, and as I walked on, I was lonely no longer. I was a guide, a pathfinder, an original settler. He had casually conferred on me the freedom of the neighborhood. And so, with the sunshine and the great bursts of leaves growing on the trees, just as things grow in fast movies, I had that familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the summer. There was so much to read, for one thing, and so much fine health to be pulled down out of the young, breath-giving air. I bought a dozen volumes on banking and credit and investment securities, and they stood on my shelf in red and gold like new money from the mint, promising to unfold the shining secrets that only Midas and Morgan and Maecenas knew. And I had the high intention of reading many other books besides. I was rather literary in college. One year I wrote a series of very solemn and obvious editorials for the Yale News, and now I was going to bring back all such things into my life and become again that most limited of all specialists, the well-rounded man. This isn't just an epigram. Life is much more successfully looked at from a single window after all. All right, guys. This is where I'm going to leave you and let you continue the chapter. We're going to meet some really important people. We're going to meet Nick's cousin, not immediate first cousin probably, but a cousin nonetheless. And her husband. So Daisy is his cousin. We'll meet Tom, her husband. We'll meet Jordan, Daisy's friend. And they'll talk quite a bit about Gatsby, but he will not meet him in Chapter 1. So I hope you enjoy, and I will talk to you guys later.